good evening, and welcome to the Super License F1 podcast, a mini-sode, Shakedown number 2. My name's called Rodney.
And my name is called Zach.
It's called Zach. That's what my name is called.
Yep. My name's got a name, and it's Zach. And yours is Rodney.
Nailed it. Should we start again? No, let's not start again. This is Shakedown. It's a little bit different to Super License, I guess, in the sense that there's no race talk. It's just a bit of news. Rod and Zach catching up during ISO, giving you something to listen to, and just generally being cool. I just stopped talking. I thought you were going to jump in with something.
Well, here I am, jumping in. Yeah, it's just me and you. We got nothing else to do, right? So we're in
exactly.
ISO. And
I certainly have nothing better to do.
No, exactly. So why not talk to each other about our shared love, the only thing we have in common, the common ground between you and I, which is Formula One.
I wonder if that has actually become the defining thing, because we used to have lots of things. But now, I feel like now it's just like F1 is so much. It's just so much.
Is our relationship becoming stale? Is that what are you trying to tell me? That
no, that's not what I'm saying. No.
Are we sitting over a Chinese dinner in downtown and you're like, I think we've just run out of things to say to each other?
No, I'm thinking about people that we both know who are still here and haven't talked to you for 5 years. If I was like, I actually talk to Zach every week. And if they were like, really? What's going on in his life? I'm like, well, I'll tell you what he thinks about F1.
What's going on in his life?
Tell you what he thinks about Honda leaving.
Yeah, he's really concerned about Red Bull's going to get power units. Oof.
Before we get into some of that news, I just want to pre-sizzle something. I put up a Twitter poll today. We're going to find out the results at the end of this week's show. The Twitter poll where our followers voted was, who invented the wheel, cavemen or aliens? Find out what our followers thought at the end of this episode. Who invented the wheel, cavemen or aliens? That's coming up ahead. Just forward promotion. Zach, we sort of teased it there. Let's get into the first kind of big development that's happened since last week and this week, which is Honda saying sayonara to F1.
Yeah, I feel like this kind of came out of nowhere. You know, we're just going about our days, and then Twitter, this happens, right? You get there'll be a tweet from a motorsport journalist or an autosport journalist or a BBC journalist that will suddenly be like, hey, just heard from an inside source that regular thing, Honda's getting out of Formula One after 2021. And then it all just happens incredibly quickly. It's like, oh my God. And then official, notice from Honda. And it's kind of opened up a very interesting scenario for Red Bull and AlphaTauri, because they're kind of in the dead zone between, they're not really have a high chance of winning races, but they're not really with the rest of the pack either. And that used to be okay when it was kind of Ferrari was in there too, but they aren't. So it's going to sit there getting podiums generally every week. Well, that's what they're aspiring for, but they can't win the world championship. And it's not really doing much for them. So I would imagine as Honda, you kind of sit there going like, well, what's the point of this either? Maybe they don't like what's in the next Concord Agreement, or in the Concord Agreement. Maybe they don't really see how it's positively impacting their brand. Maybe they want to become more electric and Formula One's not electric enough. Those kinds of things. I don't think we have all of those details yet. It's just incredibly expensive and not that worthwhile. And it feels like the last time Honda got out of the sport, right? That they were just kind of like, doesn't do much for us. So we're getting out.
Really feeling it.
What do you reckon?
To be fair, Honda have kind of gone famously from the GP2 style engine right up to winning races. And I know they're not. What we've had of late, the last year and a half or so, isn't really the Mercedes versus Ferrari battle that we've had for the last 2-3 years, where they're sort of you go into a race sort of thinking it could be anyone's game, but Mercedes will probably win. The Honda Red Bull story has been, when you were with McLaren, it was pretty terrible. You were literally at the back of the pack. You've come with us and we're doing better, but we're there to mop up when the others fall over, kind of thing. But to be fair, to go from the worst to winning races is not something to just brush off. Having said that, though, I think there's a bit of a roadmap for where F1 wants to take its stuff, and where Honda wants to take its stuff doesn't really align very closely. So they're like, see you later. What it does do for Red Bull is gives them the rest of this year and next year to sort out what's going to happen. The F1 regulations say whichever of the engine suppliers supplies the fewest number of teams has to supply any team that doesn't have an engine supplier if they can't organize another deal. And Mercedes are already up to the gills with supplying engines to other teams. Ferrari are going to say, sorry, no thank you. So that leaves kind of Renault and Red Bull to get back into bed together. And Renault have kind of signaled already like, yeah, look, we're open to that, because it's like, well, of course you're going to say that. You have to be. But yeah, it looks like, unless the other option, this is sort of some detail that's come out in sketchy it's sketchy detail. But Honda have said what we could do if another, an engine supplier or a technology partner or whatever you would want to call them, if another one of them comes along for Red Bull, we're happy to sort of license out or hand over some of our IP, if you want to call it that, to help them transition Red Bull from our engines to whatever their next engine is, as long as it's not, one of the Renault, Ferrari or Mercedes engines. If it's some other third party, they're open to doing that. That just adds a bit of spice into the mix. But I got a feeling it's going to be Renault Red Bull.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the entire time we've been doing podcasts on Formula One, been doing Super License, there's always been this, third, fourth, fifth player, the unknown engine manufacturer or power unit manufacturer who's going to come into the sport, and label it as a Tag Heuer engine or an Aston Martin engine or a Porsche engine, whatever it's going to be, Cosworth again, finally. But, because Red Bull's such a powerful brand, they don't want to share that brand with anybody else. I just don't see that happening. No one really wants to come into the sport anyway. It doesn't look like there's a huge amount of new teams that want to come into the sport. So why would a new manufacturer come in? I can't imagine like any brand from like the Volkswagen group wanting to do that with Red Bull. I think you just lose and risk too much getting in bed with Red Bull. So Renault, I'm sure, will be happy to be like, well, we're actually probably on a trajectory now that's going to be better than Red Bull. And we're going to be Alpine. We're going to have a good driver lineup. They're getting a lot out of that Renault engine right now. It's performing pretty well. So they're probably looking at this being like, cool, well, we'll actually be, instead of, coming, with hat in hand to Red Bull saying, please buy our power units. So they'll be more in a position to be like, hey, if you want them, you can buy them from us. But, how much support are we going to give you? How much help are we going to give you? You just can come and buy them. But really, we're going to have the hot new thing and you'll get whatever's left over. I know that's not technically how it works, and they'll have SLA agreements and all that kind of stuff about what level of support they have to give, Red Bull. But I think it will be different to when it would obviously be very different to when it was, a Red Bull Renault partnership, and Renault felt like they were getting the wrong end of the stick. I think it'll be the opposite this time around. And maybe Renault have learned some hard lessons about how to deal with Red Bull. And look, AlphaTauri comes along for the ride, right? Maybe this is going to be an opportunity. We've talked about it before, and this is total conjecture, but maybe AlphaTauri go off and do their own thing now, and they go and look at another engine manufacturer and say, well, Ferrari, what if we're not part of Red Bull anymore and we're our own team? Maybe you could give us some engines. I know that, there's already Alfa Romeo, there's already Haas that are getting Ferrari engines. I don't know. Is it still 4 teams that you can supply engines to as the max?
At the moment, yeah.
Yeah, so,
at the moment.
But all of those rules are meant to be bent. That's what Formula One does best. But another Italian team using Italian engines, why not? Yeah, that might suit AlphaTauri down to a T. So, yeah, I don't see Red Bull and AlphaTauri getting a new engine supplier in to work solely for them. I don't think they bring enough. I don't think that would be a good enough deal for any new engine supplier to come in. So I reckon they'll just end up with Renault engines, probably. That's probably what will just happen.
Yeah. I think that's probably right. I think there's still enough of a block that they will probably just, it's enticing as well to go to Renault and say, you're already manufacturing these engines. How about we buy an additional 4 from you, and increase your number of cars from what will then be 2 to 6. I mean, they would jump at that chance, I'm sure.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to throw into the mix is some comments from Helmut Marko relating to the old coronavirus. Don't know if you've heard of it. He said that 2 Red Bull drivers came within close proximity of people who had COVID, and there was a chance of them getting infected. He said one of his drivers, his girlfriend got it, but the driver didn't somehow. And then another one was at a party where a whole bunch of people got it, but they didn't. And there was some conjecture because they were like, well, you mentioned 2 of your drivers. Technically, Red Bull only has 2 drivers, but I'm sure Marco's talking about. I'm sure in his mind, he's still thinking across his 4 drivers, or even maybe reserve drivers. I don't know.
Yeah, he's thinking across the 40 drivers that have been Red Bull contracted.
and there's
the
25 imaginary drivers that he has in his stable that he tells people he's got that don't actually exist. He includes Lewis Hamilton in his stable as well.
Yep, Jaime Alguersuari is in that list as well.
Anthony Felix da Costa and all those guys.
Charles Peak.
We could go all day. But it's interesting as well, I think in light of the Russian Grand Prix, where over the week of tests where they were conducting tests for everybody in the F1 world, For COVID, over the Russian Grand Prix, 10 positive cases were found. And the week before that, there were 7. So the numbers of cases that are sort of encroaching on the F1 bubble are increasing. No teams, no drivers, no one in the paddock sort of thing, but it's all the people just outside the paddock and beyond that are, it feels like it's creeping in. And I don't know, I'm just getting worried.
Yeah, I think that's happening a lot across Europe right now, that it's just kind of creeping in places. The fringes, where the line starts to get blurred between like, well, this place has support bubbles and, really good, for example, somebody's office might have really good restrictions on how people come in and they sign in, and there's plexiglass separating desks and service areas and all that kind of stuff. But then those people also go and get lunch, where that maybe not is,
yes, exactly.
Maybe not the case, and people aren't wearing masks, and then they come back into the office and they might be asymptomatic for 3 weeks and be spreading it. No one knows. The fringes of Formula One are kind of like that, right? There is the kind of like red zone in Formula One where the like F1 bubble is, but every circuit you go to, there will be some cross contamination of people who aren't in that bubble, having to supply things and stuff and services and venues and facilities to people who are, and it will eventually creep in. The amount of testing they're doing and the amount of positive cases we're seeing across Europe right now, which is where we're racing, obviously. Of course, they're correlated in some way. Formula One, it's happening in lots of sports across Europe as well. That football teams and cricket teams and players and staff, they are, depending on where they live, those restrictions kind of are vastly different between people. So, I'm sure some of the teams kind of went home, or some staff went home between races this weekend and did things. And, if you're at home in Nottingham versus being at home in Hamburg, maybe your restrictions are different and what you're exposed to is different. And you can come in and you might when you finally get tested, it might be negative or positive, depending on what happens, but you've also mixed with people in the bubble before the test happens. And do they self-isolate correctly? It's just, there's a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong. And I think you're exactly right. The risk is a little bit higher than what it was when we started F1, when cases were much lower, sorry.
Yeah, got to keep it under control. They were saying that in Russia as well, that it's like the masks are not mandatory there. So people were just sort of swanning around, not wearing masks. And it was a bit, they obviously had 30,000 people at the Russian Grand Prix. And that was sort of a sign of like, hey, crowds are going to come back. But now you've got the Turkish Grand Prix saying, oh, we thought we would have crowds, but now we're sort of reversing that one. And we may actually not have crowds because we do not want this thing to get out of control. Only one more thing that I wanted to bring up. So I wonder if there's anything else on your mind while we're chatting. Anything else on the radar for you? Anything on the periphery?
No, not particularly. I mean, I'm just trying to think if there was anything that like really jumped down at me. No, I think this puts the COVID thing puts Formula One in a kind of a precarious situation.
Just say because it's faster.
Pardon?
Just say sitch, man. It's faster.
Sitch. See, now I spent more time waiting on... Yeah, it's just a precarious sitch. It's a sitch.
Precarious sitch.
Because this is not going to be a 2020 problem. I think there are going to be... They were probably planning 2021 on the idea that, and then things will just go back to normal in 2021 and we'll just do the normal calendar. I think we'll start to see possibly some changes to... what does the calendar even look like for 2021? Because we won't be racing in Melbourne. I don't think
what the conditions look like. Will it be that different than it is now? Probably not. Yeah. And then the other thing I was thinking about that was we delayed the big spec changes that were supposed to come in at the start of next year to the year after. But what if next year is just a repeat of this year in terms of how people can travel and how much, the people behind the scenes who are designing things, testing things, manufacturing things, building things, how much is their capacity going to be limited by all of this?
Yeah, and how much longer can Formula One foot that bill as well? Without crowds, it's incredibly costly to run Formula One with all that testing, all those kinds of things. And I know they say that the race promoter saves a lot of cost because they don't have to set up a track for hundreds of thousands of people to come in. Yeah. So there's some saving there, but the sport is losing money on this racing. They're just trying to keep the brand up and alive. So maybe it'll become a far more digitally focused sport. Maybe the broadcasting deals will be far more reasonable, and they'll be direct to consumer so that you and I will just be buying an F1 TV subscription or whatever it is. Maybe we'll see more compacted race weekends. I know that's on the cards anyway. Yeah, so, I think I don't mean to be a doomsayer But like, yeah, I think that there are some hard questions over the next few months as we're still racing. We're going to Nürburgring this week for the, what's it called? It's the Eiffel Grand Prix. Germany's looking at specific lockdowns in specific states, with specific things. I looked at maybe even doing some travel in Germany in the coming weeks, and I'm not doing it because there's every chance that just on, the day before I go, they're going to be like, hey, that place you're going to, they're closing all the pubs. No drinks for you. Sorry. So you can stay in your flat and you can walk around the town, but you can't do anything. That kind of stuff is starting to ramp up again. And so, if with no vaccine immediately available, Formula One, I think we need to be braced for even for this season to be impacted as well, not just next year's planning. But we've got lots of races that we've done so far, and we look good for this weekend, so that's a positive. You
know what they say, though? It's a precarious sitch.
Brexit.
Did you see that crazy go-kart footage?
Oh my God, what was the guy's name?
How crazy was that?
Multiple bits of crazy go-kart footage, right?
Well, I feel it was one incident. I saw two bits sort of cut together. This is the worst of it. But obviously a guy standing on the side of the track with a bumper that had come off his go-kart, trying to throw it at
the guy who hit him.
Other oncoming carts, which is ridiculous. And then another person, I heard that it might have been the driver's dad. I don't know. Someone absolutely charging another young,
looks like
kids,
a child.
Basically. Yeah, absolutely poleaxing them out of a go-kart while they're sitting in a go-kart, running up and poleaxing them, and they fall out and he pushes them up against the fence. Ridiculous stuff. That's exactly the stuff that makes the news. It's the stuff that people pass around, but not good at all.
Luca Corberi, who caused outrage by throwing a bumper at a rival on Sunday before starting a fight, has apologized and vowed never to race again. This is an article by Jonathan Noble on motorsport.com. We all saw the footage. I mean, it's amazing seeing him stand there being like, it's like, why are you standing there? Like, why are you holding that bumper and saying, I know what you're going to do. No, don't. And, it's just, it's insane. I think, was this the guy whose dad also owns the track? Was that part of it?
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. I don't know who actually actually ran up and charged the other guy, but his dad was involved somehow, whether that means he was involved in that he did the assault or whether he was involved in that he owns the track. I don't know.
Yeah. The pair also clashed in park format after the race with other individuals also getting involved in the brawl. I mean, yeah, it's pretty insane.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, it's a real bummer. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that people talk about in Formula 1. It's like, yeah, how come the drivers aren't like punching each other when they both get taken out, like getting in scuffles? Because like the sport's kind of moved past that. I actually don't I don't like it when people harken back to like, but sports people should really get in each other's faces, and sports have gone soft. It's like, but also it's not boxing. Like, we don't need guys fighting and putting each other in harm's way or anything like that. I think that's a bit of bullshit. Yeah, exactly. And even then, like, that's sanctioned.
That's
they're like, okay, you guys want to fight? You're going to go and come stand over here, and there's going to be a referee. Like, it's we don't need that in Formula One. It's a non-contact sport.
We're not condoning that at all. Really horrible. They're talking about lifetime bans for them, and probably rightly so. Maybe we're going to do recommendations. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to think of a recommendation. In the meantime, let's check in on the Twitter poll that was, who invented the wheel, cavemen or aliens? What would you vote for in this one, Zach?
I mean, you know me, definitely aliens.
Well, I can tell you that the winner of the poll with 52% of the vote is aliens.
Hey.
Boy, we have some cooked followers. But it's 52 to 48. That's pretty close. What's his name? Mr. Green from the ABC wouldn't call that on election night. That is very close. That's line ball. That's within the margin of error, you could say. Is a swing towards aliens, though, which is good. We'll do another poll next time we do Shakedown. This is fun. But yeah, we've stalled for enough time. Had a little bit of fun on the way, but we've stalled. Now it's time for recommendations. Zach, do you have anything you want to recommend?
Yeah, I do. And it's specific sport related. It's not Formula One related, but it is sport related.
You lost me. I tuned out.
Tuned out. Nick Hornby's Fever Pitch. Have you heard of this book before?
Yes. I've seen the movie and love it.
You've seen the movie. So, he's Nick Hornby. He's famous for
About a Boy
and High Fidelity, I think, as well.
High Fidelity, yes.
Yep. Fever Pitch is a memoir of his love of football. soccer and of Arsenal Football Club as well. It held specific resonance and impact for me because so much of what he writes about in the book actually live in that suburb. So the things he mentions, like the Gunners Fish Bar and stuff, I walk past that every day. And I walk past Highbury every day. But more applicable to our audience is the kind of explanation of a love of well, not just love, but obsession with a sport or with a thing. And I think that's applicable not just to football, not just to Formula One, and not just to sport, but to anybody who feels a certain, almost like an affliction, via obsession for something that is difficult for people to understand. And I especially love the detail of the kind of nervous energy that makes you feel a bit sick when the thing is about to happen. And I know that I get a little bit of that when I see, you know, Daniel Ricciardo is on pole and you're just like, oh man, I just want this to go okay. Just get through turn one. And I almost don't want to watch. Like I care about the thing and the guy and the sport as well so much that you're having a negative reaction to the thing that you love. And I think that Fever Pitch does a really, really, really great job of going through all of that. So if you're looking for quite a touching, well-rounded and you know, emotional foray into a man's connection with sport and teams and players and people and the community that goes all around that, I would suggest Fever Pitch by Nick Hornby.
Good pick. Really good pick. I can't let my pick be the movie for that, but maybe another time I'll recommend that. I actually have a tech recommendation of sorts. With so much news around, I was looking at my phone going, well, I need something to manage news. And I was like, wait a second, there's a news app right there. How good is that? I'm in the iPhone world. I know that not everybody is, but Apple makes a news app. And I was like, this is it. I'm going to become a hardcore Apple News app user. And the problem is that you can put in topics you're interested in. You can put in, you know, websites or news sources that you want news from, but it also curates news for you. And then the problem is I'm on this thing where I kind of just think Rupert Murdoch is fucking awful and I don't want any news from any of his sources. So I went through and blocked all of the publications that he owns or runs. But Apple News, even though I've blocked it, it keeps recommending stories from his publications. So I had to quit Apple News and I was like, okay, maybe there's something else that will do essentially the same thing. But when I block a thing, I want it blocked. I do not want it to come in. And I went back to an old favorite. Zach, remember Flipboard?
Yes.
I'm on board with Flipboard. It used to be an iPad app, an incredible magazine-style iPad app. And went to the iPhone, and then it went a bit janky, but still around, still exists. And that's my go-to for news at the moment, and highly recommend people who just want to stay on top of the news, get on board with Flipboard.
Did this come about because of the Adam Lissagore sandwich video, like Redux that came out? Because that was one of the very early Adam Lissagore sandwich ads.
That was my first time into it. And then I remember telling you, I love this Adam Lissagore guy. Can you, and you were like, yeah, he's done heaps of stuff. And I said to you, is there any way that I can get like a zip file with every video or audio or written thing that he's ever done just sent to me? I think he tweeted that at him actually. We both went down a bit of a memory lane stroll with old sandwich video recently. I guess that probably brought it back to mind as an option, but that's not to say that, you know, it was good timing for that to come along. Let's say that. I mean,
we're both big fans of, in the past, definitely big fans of it was Google Reader at a point, you know, RSS subscription, and the Reader Mac app and, I use a lot of NetNewsWire right now. I don't know why there isn't a version of that has an algorithm built around what I'm subscribed to. And that it's like, okay, I'm surprised I'm subscribed to all these RSSs, and all these, you know, that are all comics and news and tech and sport. And for me, like marketing and business bullshit as well, that I just mark as read and move on. There is surely an algorithm. This is a classic case though, where, you know, if I was more entrepreneurial, I'd be the person who was like, yeah, I should just go and do that. Why am I even talking about it on the show? Let's go and do it. But I mean, there must be hey, I read Daring Fireball, so maybe you'll also like, you know, Seth Godin's blog, or you'll also like Kottke. Like that must exist, right? If you subscribe to, you know, Super License, you might like the Strategy Report. Like that kind of thing surely would happen with suggestions in RSS if it actually existed. So yeah, the whole point though, Rod, I'm just glad you're reading news. Finally back on the news bandwagon.
Finally. There's just been so much important news that it just feels like it's changing every hour, and I just feel like I want to be on top of it. Twitter's not always the best place to spend your entire day either, but I I just feel like RSS is for things that I don't want to miss anything from, but also with news, I just want to dip in when I want to dip in, and when I don't want it to feel like an obligation. If I don't, if I don't want to indulge in it, I won't. If I do, I will. That's why it's different from RSS. RSS is for like, I don't want to miss a thing like the Aerosmith song. So, anyway, that's my recommendation, Flipboard. Your mileage may vary, people, but there you go. I want to call out some of our social bullshits. We're on Twitter at Superlicense. There's a Facebook group called Superlicense Universe. There's a website, superlicense.com.au. There's a Patreon, which people can go to if they want to support the show and just keep it sustainable, keep it going, basically. And we appreciate everything that's gone into them. After we did the first episode of Shakedown 2 weeks ago, we recorded a whole episode, which was just for club members. So if you sitting around going, geez, I wish I had something else to listen to right now, maybe sign up for that. That would be a good option for you.
Yeah, a whole episode of us talking about how we get Formula One into the Olympics and what that might look like.
That's it, baby.
Thoroughly enjoyable. Exactly the kind of conversation Rod and I would have at a pub whilst we immediately jump down a tangent. That's the whole point of Drift, is that we'd start with Formula One and move on to the kind of bullshit that we would talk about. It's very fun, and I think its whole point is to make you feel like you're in the room with us, and I think it does do that.
Yeah,
hopefully all our shows do that. So yeah. I'm really looking forward to this week's race, though, Rod. I'm kind of back in the game on Formula One. I'm keen.
In terms of fantasy or just general keenness?
Oh, fantasy, I need to do a full review. And there's trouble brewing in my fantasy team. Unsustainable Racing Point situation.
Oh, no. Okay.
I know.
Yeah, I think I went down a weird, I was like, this is experimental. This will either pay off huge or I'll plummet to the bottom. And unfortunately is neither of those. So it's so unsatisfying.
Because you don't know whether to make a change.
Burn. So, I mean, I can go back to the game I was playing, but I don't know. I just feel like it's too late now. This season's, it's all over for me. So I don't know. I'll try. But everybody please get your fantasy picks in, your predictions in. You'll get bonus points if you pick all of the, the bonus things. So please do that, and we'll have a look at the results when we do the proper show next week about the Eiffel Grand Prix. Anything else to throw into the mix, Zach?
Nope.
Excelente. Well, we might call episode 2 of what are we calling this? Shakedown.
Shakedown.
Episode 2 of Shakedown. We shook it down. It's done, baby.
Shakedown brings all the boys to the yard. That's what it is.
Yep, that's what it is. Until next time, my name's been Rodney.
My name's been Zach.
See you later. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye.